Hello and welcome. As you heard me saying yesterday, my name is Abhijit, and today I welcome you to a film appreciation of the movie we saw yesterday. The movie's name is The Little Prince. It is based on a French book. That's why the title of this presentation is, if I'm not butchering the name completely, Le Petit Prince? Le Petit Prince. So we all saw the movie yesterday. I hope you guys enjoyed the movie. This movie is very dear to me because my children love it, and that usually makes things dear to their parents. So this movie, as I said yesterday, was released in 2015, and it was directed by an American director. Let me move on to the next slide. Okay, so the book, this is the book on which this movie is based on. And as I mentioned in the outro yesterday, this book was initially written in French, and it has been translated in more than 300 languages all over the world. But this is not the only medium in which it has been adapted. It has been adapted as plays. It has been adapted as short films, short animated films. It has been adapted into audiobooks. It has been adapted into musicals. It has been adapted into many other mediums. I mean, people have even painted paintings based on this book. And cartoons, yes. It has. There's one small cartoon. I think it was released in 1965, which you can find on YouTube. It's like a 20-minute cartoon which was made out of this. So this book was initially published in 1943, and it was translated in English by this gentleman, Richard Howard. And this is the one that most of us are familiar with. Most of us with English-speaking families are familiar with. So what happened was this book was actually so influential that even before the book was published, legendary director Orson Welles intended to make it into a movie. And he actually wrote 4 screenplays based on this book to make the movie. But eventually they realized that they could not really create it into a film. It would just not do justice to the story and the way the story is being told if it was presented in film form. So when I say film form, I mean 1.5-hour movie. Okay, so that is why at that time they decided not to make this movie. He was going to make this movie right after it was going to be his follow-up movie to Citizen Kane, which is his magnum opus. So at that time, he decided not to go ahead with it. And then in the year 2012 or 13, at some point of time, director Mark Osborne was approached to make this movie. And by this time, the book had obviously become an international sensation. And there was an estate, the Exupéry estate, which had the rights to the book. And they approached director Mark Osborne for creating a movie out of it. And not for the lack of trying, Mark Osborne is actually known for very different kinds of movies that he made before this. So a very commercially successful and entertaining movie called Kung Fu Panda, and another movie based on a TV cartoon character called SpongeBob SquarePants. So this TV series cartoon character was adapted into a movie, and he directed those movies. So a lot of people wonder why they chose this particular American director why they approached him. Because when they approached him, his reaction was the same as Orson Welles. He said, I cannot make this book into a movie. And then they asked him that why is it that it is such? And the history behind why Mark Osborne was so close to the movie, to the book, was because of something that happened when he was a student. And at one point of time, he was living with his girlfriend in New York, and he got admission in an art institute called California Arts, or Cal Arts. It is very popularly known in our circles as Cal Arts. And he got admission in this school to study animation. But for that, he had to go to LA. And he was very afraid. He was in a very emotionally unstable state where he was not ready to leave his girlfriend and go. And at that time, his girlfriend gave him this book. And she said, this book will connect us. So if you hold on to the book and you go ahead and you follow your dreams, you do your studies, you become an animator, and I'll wait for you. So with that promise, she let him go. And with that promise, he got the courage to leave her and go and study in LA. And when he came back, she waited for him. They got married, and they had 2 children. And these 2 children grew up reading this book. So it was an amazing connection that was in his life. And this is the reason that the people of the estate felt that he would be the right person, because he is connected to the book in more than just knowing the book as an international phenomenon. It has some effect in his personal life. And true to form, the moment he was approached, he said, no, I cannot do justification to this book. But they kept insisting. So he went back and spoke to people he collaborated with, writers, authors, screenplay writers, and they all got together and came back with the idea that if we try to expand, because the book is, the story is pretty small actually. If we try to expand this small story into a full-fledged book, we'll have to add so much that we will lose the original story in that mix, and the focus will shift from what is happening in the book. So they said that instead of trying to adapt the book into a full-length movie, we will envelop the book in another story. And that is what we see in the movie. We actually get introduced to the book through the eyes of this girl whose story is being told in 3D animation. And she, in her journey, ends up being the neighbor of an elderly aviator who is actually the narrator in the book. So the book is actually told in first person, is told as the story that the narrator is writing. And they created a world where this book is actually not published. So in the movie, you see that when the girl is studying, a small paper plane comes into the room where she's studying. And this is basically, the story is being told that the book was actually written by the aviator, because the author wrote it in first person. So that is the enveloping story that they built around the book. And through that, they were able to create a 1.5 hour, in fact, 1 hour 48 minutes movie, so that they could introduce the world to the story in the book through the eyes of this girl. So the first time you experience this movie, you are learning about the book as the girl is learning about the book. Okay, so when they came back to the estate with this approach, the estate really loved it. And they said they gave the green light to make the book. So one of the quotes that I want to put across by Mark Osborne is, "It was important to me to have the original illustrations depicted on screen, so it felt like the aviator created them and wrote the story. I wanted it to feel authentic to our experience with the book." So to do that, the estate shared some of the writings and drawings that were done by the author. These are basically now showcased as a piece of museum, as a collector's item, where these are the original pages which the author wrote. And he wanted to bring these pages similarly, I mean, not exactly precisely, but a similar variation on these pages to screen, so that it looks like somebody who is, a good storyteller, but may not be a very trained artist, did those initial drawings. So the drawings that you see in the book are a version of what you are seeing. These are the original drawings of the author. Okay. And then the director employed two main studios. One studio was employed to do the 2D, the claymation, the stop motion, and one studio was employed to do the 3D animation, which is CG animation. So in this case, Micros, and this is the same studio with which he had worked on Kung Fu Panda and SpongeBob SquarePants. So they did the animation, the 3D animation part where you see the girl and the aviator. And method animation and on animation, method and on are together. So on animation is a subsidiary of method, and these studios did the papermation part of it. They actually employed one artist whom one family in our audience has actually met and had lunch with the artist who did the papermation for this movie. So yeah, so these both these studios are French. They are their headquarters are in Paris, and they have studios in Montreal. So Montreal studios, Montreal extensions of these studios actually did the project, the work on the project. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the voice cast, and this is usually a different approach to how we would present the making of the film, because usually we are used to learning about how the film was shot. Now, the difference between a film that is shot with cameras and a film which is created using animation is that in live action shooting, we shoot the film first and record the sound later. It's called ADR, additional dialogue recording, which is done in the studio. In animation, the pipeline is a bit different. In animation, the voice is recorded first, and then the animators animate to the voice. The animators have to match their animation to the voice of the voice actor. Now, this is important because in animation, there's a process called lip syncing, where once the body animation and all is done, there's a lip sync artist who will listen to the audio track and then animate the lips based on the sound. Okay, so when I'm doing these presentations, I usually talk about voice recording first and then go to talking about how the animation was done. Okay, so as I mentioned yesterday, some of the most award-winning actors were hired to do the voices. So Jeff Bridges is an Oscar-winning actor. He voiced the Aviator. Mackenzie Foy voiced the little girl, and we will go into more detail about how these actors were cast, how they were found, and why the director chose them. Rachel McAdams, another very respected Hollywood actor, voiced the mother. Riley Osborne, the director's own son, voiced the prince. And it was fun times when father and son were working together. We'll see some clips which will explore that. French actress Marion Cotillard did the voice for the Rose. Bud Cord, comedian, who did the voice for the King. British comedian Ricky Gervais, who did the voice for the Conceited Man. Legendary comedian Albert Brooks, who did the voice for the Businessman. American actor James Franco, who did the voice of the Fox. Latino American actor Benicio del Toro, who did the voice of the snake. When the little prince first arrives on Earth, he meets a snake. His voice was done by this actor. Paul Rudd, another comedian who is now one of the Marvel superheroes. Does anybody know which Marvel superhero is Paul Rudd? Nobody watches Marvel movies? Okay. Well, he's playing Ant-Man. Again, does anybody know who's Ant-Man? Oh, you know Ant-Man. Okay. And character actor Paul Giamatti voiced the academy teacher who have that important question to ask her. Yeah, so these are some of the finest actors in the industry. So what we are going to do is we are going to see one small clip in which we will see the behind the scenes of how the voice recording was done.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What planet is this?
This is Earth. This is Africa.
We have an amazing voice cast for the movie. I do think every actor sort of finds a key, and I'll try to find out what his is, you know.
Just a common rose? But she told me she was the only one of her kind in the whole universe. The best part of doing the voice was probably how I got to spend time with my dad doing all the recording, like in the closet or at his work.
Good.
Yeah, we would have a good time.
Doing animation, everything you do, and like it's in your voice, and you can create someone alive with just one thing. And I just think that's the most coolest thing in the world.
The businessman told me about this evidence of childhood you brought with you.
Please! Those are important!
Yeah, really protect them. Like, do whatever you can.
Please! Those are important!
It's really hard to find a little girl who can do of acting and doing what we need her to do, but also to have a spirit and a youthful enthusiasm that a little girl would have. And she had a great balance of both of that.
Hello? Hello?
Hold on. Well, hold on. Yeah. Here we go.
We have Jeff Bridges to play the old aviator.
It would comfort me very much to know for sure, but instead, I choose to believe he's up there.
What a fantastic actor, great voice, but just such a warm and wonderful person. You really want to hang out with this guy. You really want to be in his presence.
Mark is a wonderful director. He keeps the whole thing light, very relaxed. You know, when you're relaxed, all your best stuff is allowed to surface.
We're gonna cover the life plan sequence again. Plan C?
That sounds ridiculous. No, I call it your life plan.
For the mom, we have Rachel McAdams, who really has a fantastic voice, but she's a terrific actress, and I've really engaged her in the process of helping us make this mom into a believable character.
Everything's here. Oriented top to bottom, left to right. Let's take a closer look. The minute of the hour of the day of the week of the month of the year of your life. Everything. It's been a really nice, inclusive experience. Mark, you saw he comes right in the room with you, and he's very involved, and you don't feel so alone in the bubble of the recording studio. Thank you. Thank you.
Let me make you a present of a secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye.
How long did it take to complete the film?
Usually any animated movie would take around 3 years.
3 years.
Okay.
Wow. What did you say?
3 years, about 3 years. From start to finish. Like when the anytime a studio hires a director, that's the starting point, and then from that point till the release of the movie, the duration is usually 3 years. It takes that much time. Okay. Anybody has any other questions? I can answer them. Yeah.
Peter has one.
Yes, Peter. Hey.
One. You will mention something.
No remark. I was just because I have it in my bookshop. The Petit Mouse.
Yeah.
It was given to me to my birthday before I came to Aurofilm.
Oh, okay.
At the beginning of the 70s.
Oh, nice. That's nice to know. Cool. That's amazing, Peter. Thank you for sharing.
Are there any animation studios operating in India?
Many. India has a great broadcast industry, so for TV. But for feature film, there are few, and most of them are doing works for outsourcing. And there's one studio in Mumbai called Prana Studios, which does create movies directly for Disney. And they do direct-to-video movies like Tinkerbell and they did the Planes movie for Pixar.
And are there any animation schools where students can come and enroll?
Many, but the state of education when it comes to animation in India is very poor. Very poor. It's abysmal. I mean, I've been there, so I know. It's not in a good state. And I had the experience of studying animation in India and also in Canada. So I felt the difference between the education system. There is one school, a French school called Supinfocum, which has opened a school, I don't know, I don't want to call it a franchise, but a division of their school in Pune. In Pune in Maharashtra. So outside Pune, they have associated with one organization called DSK in India, and together they have opened a school where they do residential studies. So students can actually go and live there. They have hostels. And I have not seen the students work, but just knowing Supinfocum, because Supinfocum, when we say top 5 animation schools in the world, Supinfocum is number 1. So it was a very big deal for us that they decided to open a school in India. And I studied in Vancouver Film School. So Vancouver Film School is the 5th best animation school in the world. Yeah. So that's some of the things that you see how they end up recording the voices. The next slide actually talks about the music. So this movie actually won an Annie Award for best music in a feature film, and this music was composed by legendary music composer Hans Zimmer. Interstellar. Yeah, he is a usual collaborator of Christopher Nolan. So Inception, Interstellar, the Batman movies, all of them, yeah, he's done the music. He's legendary. I mean, if you Google him, if you search for him on internet, you'll find just tremendous amount of work that he has done. Yeah, so we are going to see one clip again for his contribution.
Mark managed to completely and absolutely do justice to this. This movie is autonomous, away from anything that any of us had done previously. In a funny way, I mean, that's how I treat everything. It's like, you know, it's like sort of a blank page for better or for worse.
Oh, hey there!
My favorite bits are like we brought Camille in, and you know, she's just completely magical. And all I can say is thank you, YouTube, and the late nights I spent surfing and finding her. And she brought so much to this thing. It just felt that this movie could take another voice, and so rather than it being sort of pop songs off a shelf that we shoved into this film.
Don't say hello, say hi.
So the thing I like the most is all these great musicians coming in and doing all the stuff that I couldn't even imagine before. I love the sort of collaborative process. I think very much in the spirit of how Mark made the film. Everything is sort of tailor-made and everything is a little handmade and everything has an authenticity of being only about this movie, about it.
Okay, so I think all of us can agree the importance of music. It creates an emotional connection with the audience, and I think most of the emotional reactions that we got yesterday was when some very, very melodious music was playing in conjunction with some emotional scene in the movie. So music essentially helps us connect emotionally with what we are seeing. And when you are doing something so respectable, why not hire the most respectable music composer? And Hans Zimmer is second to none when it comes to reputation, and just the entire collage of work that he has done is amazing. Okay, moving on. So now once the sound and the music is being recorded, so this is not one after the other step-by-step process. Multiple departments start working at the same time. Okay, so there's one department which is recording voices, there's one department which is doing the music. At the same time, there is the art department, which is basically putting together the look and feel of the characters, the locations, the entire scenario and all that. So what I'm sharing with you now are a few early sketches which were done based on the internal discussions that the director had with the character and concept artists that worked on the movie. So here you can see the early sketches of the Little Prince with the fox. This is the Little Prince with his rose. These are some of the early designs for the girl, and they wanted to have a very, very particular look for the girl, because it is through her exploratory journey that we get introduced to the prince. So the lifestyle that she has before and after had to be depicted through her design. So how lively the girl is, all that has to come through the design of the character. This is the elderly aviator, and this is the businessman. In the 3D animation part of the movie, the businessman becomes in the end of the movie becomes the antagonist of the movie, which was not appreciated by everybody. And this is what the director was most afraid of, that the over enveloping story should not take people away from the actual story of the Little Prince. And most of the people I have interacted with in film circles, they always felt that the movie could have done with maybe 10 minutes less of the 3D animation. The entire ending sequence of the girl going to rescue the prince seems to be a bit tacked on. But they have to find some way of ending the story. The third act, they have to find some, and I feel that they didn't go too far. They went a little bit, but not too far into the story of the girl, so that they didn't lose the prince in the process. But there you go. And then once the designs, the concept designs, the character designs, the set designs, the prop designs, all those are done, the next step is called storyboarding. Okay, so storyboarding is the process where they basically take the script and create a comic book out of it. Okay, that's the easiest way for me to explain storyboarding. For every when a story is converted into a screenplay, it's basically broken into something called scenes and shots. So a scene is every location that the story is happening at, and shots are the cuts that you see in those. So the camera placements that you see in that location are known as cuts. So this is called scene shot breakdown, and that becomes the screenplay. So it's written like a play, but for screen, so it's called screenplay. And then a storyboard artist would take that play and create boards out of it. So comic book panels. Now, although this seems to be a simple enough process of drawing panels to show what is going on in the screenplay, but in the actual process, this is a very, very technical part of the process, because they not only have to show each camera composition, each camera shot, they also have to describe technical information about how to shoot this. So they actually put all the information about what time of the day it is, Are there birds in the background? What kind of look and feel? Do we have warm look, cold look? So depending on that, they will use color temperature. Do we have what is the focal length? What is the lens that has to be used? What is the position of the camera? Is it high, low, eye level? All that information has to be written. So we don't usually see it in images like this because this is a simplified version of the storyboarding process. But actually the storyboard artist does way more than just create frames. Okay, so I want to bring emphasis to that. There is a huge emphasis on the technical work that a storyboard artist has to do, along with being a fantastic artist who is a fantastic photographer. Because a photographer, when you study photography, is when you learn about composition and the various rules of composition to create frames. Okay, so these are some of the storyboards that were created by the storyboard artist to show the flow of the story. And again, I would like to quote, I asked the storyboard artist to channel the point of view of the little girl and make it feel like it came from the imagination of a child. By she, he means the storyboard artist, boarded the scene when the aviator meets the little prince. And when the director saw, he said his first reaction was, she's created magic. And these are some of the storyboards that the storyboard artist created. Now, along with the boarding, basically the framing of each shot, they also do one more thing, which is called the color script. So they actually create a palette, a color palette, which will be used to tell the story. So for each type of storytelling, they created a different color palette. So a color palette was created for showing the girl's world with her mother, which are very different, very muted colors, very gray colors were used to show that world. And then you remember when the first time they see the aviator's house, immediately you can see the difference in the bright colors and the number of colors that were used. We start moving more towards primary colors, more reds, more yellows, more blues, and then when you go into the prince's world, it just, the screen explodes with color temperature. It's all bright and, lively and very fun to look at. So it's basically through color, they also convey what kind of emotions they want the audience to feel. And these techniques are used to make audience feel something. Okay, so this is what they would call a color script. Again, I'll quote the director. We wanted to honor the avant-garde nature of the poetic source material. We defined the look and feel of the stop motion, which in turn inspired the CG lighting tests based on real light and real materials. So what they did was they actually created the look and feel for the stop motion first, and which, since it was not in computer, it was done by using real lights. And they ended up using that information to dictate how lighting was done in the computer animation part of it. So that really helped them. If they would have gone, I'm sure it would be different results, not to comment on whether it would be better or not. But this approach really helped them in bringing out the look and feel of the film. And the main links between the worlds were color and the quality of light. This is what linked the transformation from when you go from the girl's world into the aviator's world, from the aviator's world into the prince's world. If at any point of time, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, moving on. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you one small clip in which we are going to see and pay attention to the bottom of the screen, because we are going to scroll the script while a scene is happening on the screen. Okay, and you'll be able to see how it goes from script to screen.
Hello? Hello?
Hold on. Well, hold on. Yeah. Oh, here we go.
Wow. I just wanted to give your drawing back.
Oh, you didn't like it?
No, I did.
No, it's not very good, is it?
I think it's nice. I read the story too, attentively, and I found it quite odd.
Odd?
I mean, curious or interesting. I guess I have some issues with some of the facts.
Oh, you have questions?
I don't mean to be rude, can I?
What, be rude? Sure. Go ahead. What you got?
Well, first of all, what was a kid doing there in the desert? That's very strange. No one can last very long in a desert without food and water. Where are his parents? Does he even go to school? Does he really live up there? Because I took basic astronomy and there was no mention of life or children on any other planets. Unless it's true that it came from a star, but that seems improbable.
Not a star. An asteroid. Asteroid B612.
Oh, we didn't cover asteroids.
But the fact that he wanted a sheep, that pretty much proves that he exists, don't you think? Hold on, I just gotta find you another drawing.
Wow. This is a pretty serious fire hazard.
Huh, I never looked at it that way.
Where did you get all this stuff?
Oh, well, as you live, you know, some things just kind of stick to you. There's a name for it.
Collecting?
Hoarding. That's it, hoarding. That's what I am, a hoarder. A bit of a hoarder.
Aw. What's your name, little fox?
Oh, he can't answer you. Keep meaning to sew him in mouth.
Oh. Are you okay?
Oh, I'm fine. This happens sometimes. Just need a minute. Although the last time this happened, I was down here for 3 days.
3 days?
That's okay. That's why I always keep a sandwich in my pocket. You want a bite? Bologna.
I think I'm bologna intolerant.
I think it's bologna.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How old is the girl whose voice is being used?
Mackenzie Foy at that time, I'm not really sure.
Is she a teenager?
Yeah, no, preteen, I think, 11 to 13, sometime between that. Yeah, I can very much relate to the girl's physicality because I have a 11-year-old daughter and she's pretty much the same. This thing cannot be like that. Why is this like that? I don't know why that works like that. You know, so I'm guessing. I'm not really sure at that time. So this is 2000, sometime in 2013-14, because the movie came out in 2015. So it takes around 3 years, 12-13, that it was recorded. Okay, next screen. Yeah, so now we finally come to the actual animation, and as I mentioned earlier, there were two different styles of animation used: 3D animation to tell the story of the girl, and then that envelopes the papermation. Now I keep using this term papermation, and this term is a variation on the style of animation that is used, but the actual technique is called stop motion animation. So this is basically where they actually prepare puppets, prepare miniature sets, and do lighting and all that on miniature scale in real world. And they animate these puppets by hand. So for any animation, you need to create minimum, for film, it is 24 frames per second. So they have to actually animate these puppets by hand 24 times in a second, and for every pose they have to take a photo. So this is how stop motion animation is. That is why it's called stop motion animation. Yeah, so they will pose a character and then click a photo and then change the pose a little bit, click a photo, change the pose. So every single nuance of the character is actually a pose in which the character is made to stand, including clothing, and in his case there's a scarf that flows behind him. These were animated frame by frame, and then a photo is taken, and then that becomes the sequence of images that you see playing in the movie. So without any doubt, this is by far the most meticulous and tedious way of animating. But it is so loved. There are so many beautiful movies which are created using stop motion animation that this phenomenon is still alive in this world of digital and technology based animation. This style of animation is actually almost as popular as 2D hand-drawn animation, which I personally prefer more than 3D animation. And it's not because technology is bad and all that, just the fact that these styles of animation are being used to tell such beautiful stories. Okay, so we're going to see one clip in which we'll get to see how they did 2D and 3D. And after the clip, I'll do a little bit of talking.
You're gonna be a Worth Academy graduate because I've designed a plan. I call it your life plan. The minute of the hour of the day of the week, the year of your life, everything.
Up here! Hi!
This film is about the friendship between this little girl and this old aviator who shares the story of the little prince with her as a way to open up her imagination.
Once upon a time, there was a little prince who lived on a planet that was scarcely bigger than himself.
It's this other magical universe and very different from the reality that she lives in. And to create a contrast between these two worlds, I decided to use both computer animation and stop motion.
If you please, draw me a sheep.
Everything in the stop motion sequences is made out of paper to represent the imagination of the little girl reading the book.
Stop motion is frame by frame, so everything has to stay in one place for every shot.
I've never worked with a puppet before that was covered in paper, and that was a challenge, trying to come up with an armature that wouldn't put too much stress on the paper that covered it.
I didn't want to make anything too clean, and my approach to sculpting these guys has all been like an imperfection and a roughness and like a natural handmade feel.
Every scene has such an important color in it. We use watercolor and inks to dye paper. We're making a lot of our own paper colors and textures.
It's a fun challenge. We're not just surfacing every sand dune with a sand look. We're folding paper, and so how do you get that to still feel like you're in a hot desert? I try to do that with light. We build in a very theatrical way, but we light in a very realistic way.
It's very painstaking, it's very labor-intensive. There's some shots that just have so much complexity involved. And some of my favorite shots in the film took up to 9 days to actually animate. Computer animation really helped us create a grounded, believable world. And I really felt that stop motion was the best way to tap into this very childlike universe.
We will find.
This film was hundreds of truly dedicated, passionate artists that were really wanting to bring the poetry of the book to new audiences. We wanted to do something really unique and special, and everybody did an extraordinary job.
When the moment does come for me to leave, I have to go alone.
What is essential is invisible to the eye. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly.
You're gonna make a wonderful grown-up.
24 frames per second?
Yes. So the number of frames that are used, there's a variation on it. 24 frames per second is the frame rate of film. So if it has to be projected in a theater, that's the frame rate. If you are showing it to TV in India, it's 25 because that's PAL, and if you're showing it in America in TV, it's 30 frames per second because that's NTSC. So these are video formats for different regions. But film is universal, so they use 24 frames per second. Okay, so the thing that I wanted to talk to you about was that, as you can see, that it's a very tedious process, and it takes hundreds of artists to do this kind of work. And one of the things they mentioned is that how many seconds they did in a week. And from what I know, and I have some friends who work in these movies. It's literally 2 seconds of animation a day. So 2 seconds is what, 50 frames, because everything has to be created. Everything has to, there is nothing that is there. There's no location shooting. Everything has to be created from scratch and animated. The lighting, the color, everything has to be done in camera. I mean, there are some things that with technology, they do more, they take help of computers more now. But in essence, for the authenticity of the art, they actually create everything from scratch. And it's literally, if an animator does 2 seconds of animation a day, he's considered a fast, very employable. His employability factor goes up depending on if he can do at least 2 seconds of animation a day. Okay, so this is one of the reasons that it takes so many years to make these kind of movies. And this is one of the reasons that people whom I've worked with and people in this industry hope that audiences go out to theaters and support these movies. Because if these movies, I mean, you have to understand, it's not just show, it is show business, show biz. Unless the movie makes the money that the studio has invested in it and makes profit on top of that, the studio will stop investing in these kind of artwork. And this is what is actually happening in the industry right now with 2D hand-drawn animation and stop motion animation. Some of the most beautiful stop motion animated movies that I've seen. There's a studio, I have a friend who works there called Leica, who have made movies like Kubo and the Two Strings. Beautiful, beautiful movies. But these movies didn't do much business. So that studio is, with every production, that studio is going bankrupt, slowly, steadily. And eventually they will run out of money. So, and the tremendous amount of work that goes behind this will slowly die out. So we always hope that people support these movies so that these studios can keep making.
So why do you think the animated movies are not so supported?
No, it's not that people don't support these movies. It's just that the frenzy that people are in right now with watching 3D animation has just pulled the focus from these movies. Because these movies have something to say. These movies are not just mindless entertainment. They want people to emote. And then if people feel that their kids will go to the movies and get bored, they don't take them to the movies. So they only take them to movies which are all popcorn, and for 1-2 hours the kids are taken care of and we don't need to worry. So it's because of the cultural change that we as a species are facing. That mindless entertainment which just engages the kids without any takeaways is what works now. So only those kind of movies are being made more. And that speaks to our decline as a culture. Yeah, but that's a topic for another day. Anyways, moving on. And also to mention that, just so that we know, the softwares that are used in making the 3D animation for this movie is called Maya. And I had the privilege of working with the studio the software company that made that software when I was working in the industry. They are a Toronto-based company called Alias, which made the software, which later merged with another company called Wavefront, and at one point of time they were called Wavefront. Before, at some point in time, they were acquired by a huge software company called Autodesk, and now all the animation softwares come under one software company called Autodesk. They are like the Disney of software, animation software company. And so anyways, the software that was used for doing the 3D animation is Maya. Moving on.
Nice name. Nice name.
Yeah. It's actually, I mean, when I was working with Alias, this was one of the things that we asked them, that why have you named the software Maya? And there's a story behind it. One of the creators' wife's name. And what happens is whenever software companies make softwares and they are looking to give it a name, they ask all the developers to put a name in a chit and put it in a box, and they roll it and they pick the name. And this is the name that got picked. And the significance of why this worked for that software company is because the word Maya is literally translates to illusion, and the software is used to create illusion. And as such, animation is known as the life of illusion. I mean, animation is known as creating illusion in motion, the illusion of life. It's not real. It's an illusion. It's just a number of frames running one after the other that makes you feel that the character is moving or alive. Yes.
When I hear the word Maya illusion, according to Shorbindo, at least there's this other Maya, which is the power of formulation.
Oh, okay.
Expression.
Oh, wow. Maybe I should write to them now, saying that there's another idea towards the usage of the use Maya to create. Yeah, that's amazing.
To formulate.
Oh, okay. To give form.
Yeah.
Nice. So that's pretty much what we do with the software.
The films have been called the world of dreams. It's a dream world.
Yeah.
There's an essay by John Luke Goddard saying, "A truth 24 frames a second."
Oh, okay. There you go. Now we know why it's 24 frames per second. And it's the same for animation. Oh, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. Okay.
Just for the record, I think it's not the only software I use.
Absolutely. It's not.
So you have also open source software, Blender.
Yes.
Blender and
Yes. There are many. Just regards to this movie, they used Maya in this animation. So what I would like to actually expand on what Philip just said. There is not just one software which is used for creating any kind of animated world. Maya has basically over a period of many years become the most popular software for animation studios to use. And I was part of one of the reasons why it became so popular is because as a company, Alias was so dedicated to listening to their clients and listening to what the artists were asking for. And they're developing their software's new versions based on the demands of the artist. And that is one of the things that I was part of, because I used to work as a demo artist for the software. I used to demonstrate these softwares in seminars, workshops, trade expos, go to studios and sit with the artists and technical people who were using this software to discuss what their demands were. And I would take that feedback back to the software company, and they would, the R&D team would work on that. Yes. And this is something that, we have lost with such a big conglomerate now owning the software. They basically do what is good for business. And then artists has to adapt to whatever upgrades have been provided to them. And, studios have to adapt to hiring their own developers so that they can do because the software is almost open source to the sense that you can actually add things to the software. You cannot take things away, but through programming you can actually add to the softwares to...
This is not open source.
This is not open source, yeah. It is not, yes.
So it's usually burden on clients if they are customizing with their own pocket money.
Yes, they have
Instead it's going back to the company itself who is developing, and they are adding features on top of it.
What is the business model for paying people who contribute to Maya?
Well, they buy from them.
Yeah.
So it's like...
If they don't use it, what? Somebody makes an input that is rejected?
No, they don't make it for the company. They make it for their own pipeline. So they will do this in their R&D department in their studio. And then if Autodesk or any such studio which is developing that software gets to know about it, they would go to the client and say, oh, this is a very good feature, and we would like to give it to all our clients, so can we purchase it from you? So there's something called SDK, right? Software Development Kit. They would purchase the SDK from the client and put it in the softwares with the new releases. So this is what is the software development scenario now. Sorry, that got a bit technical. Okay, next slide. Anybody any other questions or inputs? Okay, I move on. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is I want to show a few clips, and there's a reason I'm showing these clips, is images, is because this also takes us, gives us an idea about how involved is the director in the making of this movie. So is he just calling shots and doing that? No. In this case, mostly in animated movies, the director himself has been an animator in his history. You know, the director, like in his case, he was a graduate of CalArts, which is, the courses at CalArts are extensively art related, and they do go very, very deep into the study of arts for anybody to graduate from CalArts. I mean, they're one of the best. There's a good reason for that. And anybody who gets graduates out of CalArts comes with the reputation of the school, that they are, tremendous artists. That is the reason they were able to graduate. And then these artists will join the industry as trainee or junior animators and work for years and years as animators. And few of those animators who are bright enough to start thinking on their own eventually become directors. So basically in a studio, every studio has this scenario where they actually allow their artists to pitch stories to them and then come up with ideas about, like, even if you talk about major studios like Pixar and Disney, and they always have a platform where people who work in the studios can come up with ideas and share with the studio and say, I have this idea and I want to make it into a movie. And if they really like, they obviously go into a whole length of shortlisting, and if they really like what the particular artist is offering, they will give him the budget to actually direct the movie and make it. So that's how Mark Osborne, also working as an animator for a long time, eventually evolved into a director. And because of that background, his control over the work that is being done is tremendous. He can really put his vision. Nobody can do things and tell him that this is the only way to do it. He can actually tell them no. There are other ways of doing it. So these are some of the clips I'm showing you where the director is actually giving input back, technical input, like the eyebrows should be turned like this, the eyes should be rounder, the nose should be more flared. All those kinds of input he's giving back because he knows how the software works and he knows that these things are possible. So he cannot be told that what you're asking we cannot do. In fact, he is of a caliber that if you tell him we cannot do it, he will sit on the computer and show you how to do it. So that gives him very good control over the kind of work that is being done. So I just wanted to show you a few, notes that he would, do's, don'ts. The lip should be a bit more corner, and he is a fantastic artist. So he knows composition, he knows how the character should look, how the character should feel, what should be the emotion, what pose gives what emotion, and all those information he could convey to the artist firsthand. And these are basically what we call it as dailies. So he would get some animation from the team, and he would go through them, and in the evening he would give them feedback based on dailies. So this is a daily process for the director. To do this, to interact with his artist. And these are a few initial sketches with dialogue notes. So something like JB's bottom lip seems to do all the work, his top lip doesn't seem to do much. So he can give feedback that you animated great, but it seems that only his bottom lip is moving, his top lip is not moving much, can you do a little bit more? And he could in fact give feedback, in these frames I want the lip to be open, up, down, left, right, whatever, based on what kind of expression he wanted from the animators. So that's the reason I wanted to share these slides.